Okay, we'll make a start then. So welcome everyone to BIM4Water's Uniclass Q&A session with Sarah, Delany and Martin Hunt. Today we've got about an hour and a half and we'll see how we get on with time to run through and get an overview of the Uniclass for the water sector from Sarah and Martin. And then we've got a few questions which got pre-populated, which we're going to kind of respond to. But then if anyone in the audience has got a question, drop it in the chat and we'll put that to the guys to try and answer everything today. So with that, I'd like to welcome Sarah and Martin. If you can kind of share your screen and present, then we'll make a start.
Good morning, Claire, and my first thing is to apologise for the fact that my voice isn't entirely under my control at the moment, so I do apologise. Hopefully it'll hold out, but Martin will, I'm sure, be able to leap in if everything goes pear-shaped. So, right. So I thought that the first thing that would be helpful to do, on the basis that I suspect some of the people on the call were at the launch of the guide for using Uniclass in the water industry, was just to sort of recap some of the things that actually our colleague in Australia said, Greg Ryan. His presentation really summarised the key reasons why you would need to even think about this, and some of the benefits and advantages. So can you just confirm that the slide has moved on, because sometimes it doesn't work for me?
No, it has, yeah.
Fantastic, thank you very much. So he put up this slide which sort of gives a sort of overview of the types of activities that you'll all be involved in, and why digitalization is something which is a key way to move forward and adopt in principle, so that you can make your whole business more efficient. And fundamentally, data and the information that you hold and use and share is absolutely core, a key part of all of this. So the benefit then he identified of using Uniclass is that it helps you to organize things in a logical order. And I think one of the things that's become apparent to me as I've talked to the various different companies and at various different BIM4Water events is that you all have internally very good asset management systems, in terms of the fact that you're using things like Maximo or some of the other maintenance pieces of software, but that everybody has their own way of describing things, and their own and even within one organization, moving from one facility to another, things are called different things because that's how it's been developed, the person who was doing it at the time. So if you can use a more common way of describing things, it makes it a lot easier for the administration to be able to manage all of that. And it helps them with the exchange of information with your asset management systems. And the other thing, of course, that helps to avoid duplication, and hopefully makes it more reliable. External collaboration is something which you do need to have. Obviously, all water utilities have to work with the Environment Agency, but also with rivers authorities, town planning, all sorts of different organisations that you have to be able to work with. And if you've got a common way of describing things, then obviously it's going to make it easier for those organisations to be completely confident about what information you're sharing. The regulators also have an interest in having the information provided to them structured the same way, and also Greg was keen to point out that you can actually streamline your processes, because if you've then got the similar processes going on in all your different facilities, you can make sure that they're all described similarly, and you can ensure that you've got all the right materials, equipment and personnel to make sure that they all know exactly what's happening, regardless of which part of the estate that they're travelling to. And so you've got this common terminology to help describe everything. And then for those of you who are working towards digital twins and national initiatives, then that helps. Having this common structure is going to help as well. So just then to quickly confirm what the scope of Uniclass for the water industry, I should have put the word industry in there as well. So the sections that you'll be interested in are all going to cover water, sewer and stormwater assets, headworks, treatment networks and disposal. And then, but there are also, because Uniclass has been developed in order to meet a huge number of different organisations' requirements. For the building industry, you've got domestic and commercial water supply and wastewater, and then anything within a property connection. So sites like hospitals and that sort of thing, you're not going to be dealing with that. And also in many cases, you're not involved with agriculture and aquaculture systems, although you will inevitably have an awareness of that. So let's have a quick look at the tables and their names and how you should be familiarizing yourself with them. Terminology is one of the banes of our lives. Everybody brings their own interpretation of the words we use to the tables. And this does cause confusion, because if you've got your own idea of what a complex is, then you may be misinterpreting what's included in these tables. Now, this terminology comes from the ISO 12006 Part 2, which seemed the most logical place to start. And the definitions then are basically those, and it's important that you understand that, and that you then use the definition of what the complex is in terms of that standard to relate to the installations that you manage. And so a complex is a very high level thing, basically. And you can use the description of a complex to cover a huge range of the other tables classifications. So the next one down is an entity, and the way the standard describes this, it's a discrete element. It's a part of something, and you have a number of different entities which come together within your complex. So your complex is the umbrella description, and then the entity is a smaller, more discrete part of that complex. Using the term elements there is one that that people use. Elements are used for all sorts of different things. Don't get confused with what the elements table is all about here. So again, this is all back to terminology and keeping things clear. And then within the entity, you have a number of systems, which are the different processes that you manage as water utilities, whether you're doing wastewater treatment or water supply treatment. And what the group that we've been working with has helped us to do is to try to cover all the different processes that you will be involved in, and included them in the systems sections. And then finally, you have the products. So the products and what's important about the product table is to understand that it's set out a little bit like a supermarket, a product supermarket. So it's organized such that things of similar nature are all gathered together in one area. So if you walk into a B&Q or any of the um, DIY type stores, then if you're looking for a specific thing, you know which department to go to because everything related to that's all going to be in that area. And so that's how we've organized the products, because similar products can be used in different applications. And so you make your products specific by attaching them to a system. And that's really important to be aware of. So this was a diagram that the Sydney Water produced, just a really basic layout to try to identify the different parts um, of a system of a network, to identify what sort of things needed to be identified with classification. And again, there's no right and wrong way of doing this, but I've put some potential codes in here. So your bulk water source could be any one of a reservoir, an aquifer, or a river. And you'll notice that these codes here are not associated with the 55 that otherwise is used for um, water supply, because, for example, with reservoirs, there are other activities that go on around reservoirs, and so it's not unique to the water industry. Similarly with aquifers and rivers, which are naturally occurring things. And then you've got the option to put in raw water pumping stations, treated water pumping stations, treated water pipelines, treated water storage entities. So, and then the raw water treatment entities here. So you can build up a picture by taking a very basic look at your installations and just working through them using these whatever is the most appropriate, considering what your installation is. A similar sort of thing here that they produce just for wastewater, and there you've got wastewater collection pipelines, wastewater collection pumping stations, and then wastewater treatment entities. So this is one of the examples that Greg brought up here. And you can see here, and I think this partially answers one of the queries that came through in advance, is that there's a suggestion that you could do everything via products, and actually that's not necessarily going to be the most appropriate way to work, because your jet diffusers in this particular instance could be used in not just the activated sludge aeration system, but could be used in other instances as well. And then it's probable that this is going to be one of your wastewater treatment entities, and it's all part of your wastewater treatment complexes. So in many ways, it really is probably not going to give you the best use of the classification if you try to do everything with products. The other thing that he emphasized was that in most cases, you will be involved picking out things from different parts of the tables, because you may well have an administrative office on the site where your major treatment is, in which case, and if you're doing any kind of building or refurbishment or alterations, then you'll need codes associated with construction and services. and within that, the products that sit within that. So whether it's concrete or brick, or and with your air conditioning, your fans, and your cooling equipment. So there are parts of the table that you need to be familiar with as well if you're looking at a whole site. But fundamentally, you're going to start off predominantly with the areas that cover specifically the industry that you're in. Now, this is the code that was launched. Hopefully you've all got copies of it. It does give you help and guidance on how to select appropriate codes and apply them to your particular assets, and it also gives some advice about the fact that within your system you will have an asset register, and there is no necessity or requirement to throw that out and replace it all with Uniclass codes. Your first thing is to sit down and map your existing asset register to the Uniclass and identify exactly what the Uniclass codes classifications are in relation to your own naming within your asset register. And in that way, if you then move from one facility to another and do that same mapping, it then gives you the ability to be able to compare one to another more easily. And the other important thing when you're working on this is to really sit down and have a clear idea of what you are going to be doing with this information. Obviously, you've already got all your asset processes, your maintenance and operation processes in place. So that's a very key uh, uh, area that you need to be able to or to be able to manage the data for. But also you need to have a clear idea of what information it's important to be able to share either within your organization or outside of your organization, in order to really have a clear view on what classifications you're needing to use. So I just thought we'd have a quick look at the website. No, it's not going to work. Oh, I will, I think I've got it already fired up here. Here we are. So hopefully you're all very familiar with our website and have been able to find your way around it. There are two ways of working your way through the tables. You can either search for specific information, like, for example, searching for a reservoir, in which case you get a whole series there of options, and there we have the reservoir, and it's within the water control and retaining complexes, and it's alongside water level and flow monitoring, lock complexes, that sort of thing. So that's one way of finding your way around. But the other way is you can browse through the tables themselves. This then takes you through the whole structure of the table. And for example, on your pipe supply, you can see here. But again, you have to be aware that we're looking at all sorts of different industries: gas extraction, liquid fuel supply. In this case, you've got two here, either water extraction and treatment or water supply. In your water extraction and completion complexes, you've got raw water extraction transfer networks, and water treatment complexes. If I go back to the water supply, you've then got potable water distribution complexes and networks, and then recycled water distribution. This is an area which is more commonly used in Australia than in the UK, but as this classification is used internationally, that's fine. We use those areas. So that's within the complexes table. And taking note of the fact that we've got CO 5570, I can go back here to the home and I can look at the entities and look at the EN 55, and here I've then got water extraction treatment, all the different types, descriptions of the different parts of the raw water. And then if I go back and look at the water supply, you've then got treated water, treated pumps, and treated water storage entities. So everything is organized, hopefully in a logical way, which gives you help to find the appropriate areas that you want. One area that hasn't been described in more detail, or let me just have a look at this. We've got the pipe supply, and here again you've got all these different types of pipe supplies. So water distribution and supply is one of the key areas here, and the ones that are not likely to be your responsibility are the consumer water reclamation systems and the consumer water treatment systems. But never the rest of them, treated water pumping systems, you've got dry well and wet well pumping systems there, for example. And then distribution, gravity, pressure, and private water distribution networks, which my understanding is that occasionally there is a responsibility for a utility to be involved in that. So, and there, that gives you just again, looking at the wastewater, we've got wastewater collection here, all the different parts. Again, some of these are more geared up for the consumer side of things. But then this area here is predominantly aquaculture. This is all about fish farming, actually, mostly. But also here you've got all the different groups of treatment, whether it's the sludge treatment or the sewage treatment or surface water treatment. And there's one area as well that might help you with all that wastewater treatment. Under the elements and functions table, we have this wastewater disposal, and we've added in these particular groupings, really: preliminary wastewater, primary wastewater, secondary wastewater, because some of the systems that are listed can be used in any of these. So you've got an additional way there of grouping together systems for particular parts of your utilities, your facilities. So I don't know, Claire, whether that's a point to stop and see whether there's any questions arising from that. I have got more slides if we've answered so far everything.
And so, is anyone in the audience got a question that they would like to ask? No.
See in chat somebody's asked about where the guide is.
Yeah, myself and
Claire.
Tim are currently working in the background. We're going to get
Oh,
that
perfect.
on to the website by tomorrow. We'll put it on LinkedIn today, and then we'll get an email out as well to the guys who've registered for the event to send that to.
That's excellent. Yeah.
So I mean, we can take the questions that we got beforehand. So I think you've covered, so best practice on when and how to use complexes, spaces, locations. And then if unable to apply Uniclass code, I'll put my teeth in today. If unable to apply a Uniclass code to individual levels of a functional hierarchy, should all codes be applied to the lowest level?
That the danger there is if you go for all products that you're missing a whole load of information. So it would be interesting to understand the difficulties people are having in actually mapping to the other tables from their asset registers. It's it seems to me that you have to be able to relate the particular product to the system it's part of, the installation, and the particular facility, the complex or entity that you're talking about, so that if you're going to be sending out an engineer to rectify a fault or carry out some maintenance, they need to know exactly where that piece of equipment is. First of all, where about in your on your various different facilities they are, where on that site it can be found, and then which system it's part of.
Okay. And then the other question was, if applying multiple codes to a functional level equipment, how should the user delineate the codes, comma, colon, semicolon, etc.?
Right. This is a question fraught with danger from my point of view.
Right.
Um, whatever symbol you choose, there's a piece of software that will get very upset about it. So we haven't given any advice or guidance on this. In the original Uniclass, published back in 1997, beg its pardon, there was a suggestion that you use semicolons, and that seems to me a logical way. But as I say, various different software packages get very upset with certain symbols, and therefore it's difficult for us to really be clear. So, but yes,
Yeah.
I can see that there is a definite need to be able to add those concatenations to make it clear. And again, I suspect that's specifically within pieces of software. So be interesting to know how organizations do it at the moment using their asset management software.
Okay. Is there any more questions from the audience? Everyone's very quiet and hiding. Good. Good to know what, this is your opportunity, guys, to see how you can adopt this system on your current working environment. So it'd be great to get your input.
And I must say that both Martin and I are always really happy to help with any advice. We obviously can't do it for you because we're not familiar with your installations, but if you wanted to take a small chunk of your estate and go through and try and do the exercise, we'd be more than happy to sit with you and help you to find the appropriate codes and the right way of doing it. And then once you've established that sort of process, then hopefully you'd be able to roll that out on other parts. And if you're struggling to find codes, then again, I'll put up the end are the places you can have a look to send a question to us or whatever else. So
I was going to say, have you got any worked examples where you've mapped to an existing system?
we haven't been given one. I'd
Okay,
be more than
that's fine.
happy to do it. But
maybe that's
yeah.
maybe we need to do a quick webinar on that.
Yeah, I mean, it would be really useful to have a typical installation just to work through, and whether that's a site where you've simply got a pumping station which is drawing water from a river and sending it through to the treatment works, or whether that's actually a facility where you've got all the wastewater treatment filtration systems and where all the chemicals are added. It would, I mean, it helps us as well to understand, because Martin's a civil engineer, but I'm basically a building services engineer, and although I appreciate all the work that's done, The intricacies are way beyond me.
So someone's just put into the chat some example IFCs would be great.
Do you know that, again, it would be brilliant to work with some of you on that. I have another colleague in the office, Chris Vickers, who's been working with some of the Building Smart people to put IFC codes against products. It's not easy. We're having to call it alignment because it's not mapping, because there's not one-to-one. And it's it's an exercise that we're working hard to do, but within our organization, Martin's huge help in helping us to interpret the requirements, but we don't have the in-depth expertise that you all have, and your help would be so much appreciated. I mean, there are within that manual. Shall I go back to my presentation? Within the manual, and it probably would have been helpful if we'd had diagrams with this as well, but obviously we're working across the world, it wasn't so easy. But these are the sorts of examples here that are identified in that guide. So examples of the waste disposal complexes, the two potential options there, and then going down to the lowest level here. Within
Sarah,
that,
I'm not sure if that's showing for people on the screens. Do you want to just double check that? That looks more like it.
There
I
it
think
is.
something's coming
It's
through
in
there.
now.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Thank you, Martin. I'm so good at this software stuff. Yeah, so here you've got, working down through the table, some examples of how you can get down to the basic pieces of kit that need operating and maintaining, starting at the top here with your complexes, breaking it down into the wastewater entities, looking at all the different systems that you're particularly interested in, and then the products associated with that. One thing, I don't know how familiar you are with Uniclass, but you'll find in these tables the complexes and entities and the spaces that we only ever go to 3 pairs of numbers because we haven't needed to go to a lower level of granularity. But in the systems and the products, you have 4 pairs of numbers because we needed that additional level to get to the granularity that was appropriate. But you see, for example, here, a needle valve can be used in many different systems here. So it is important not to just go with the product. It is important to link the particular product that you're talking about with the system that it's a part of. Let's see if I can change the screen. There we go. So this one here is all about various different networks. Again, you've got the pipe supply, the complexes at the top here, going down to the entities here. This is for water supply as opposed to wastewater. Whoops, go back again. Your pipe supply systems here, your treated water storage tank systems, but then here's some of the different pumps that are available as part of the systems that are above here. So I think these examples, when you get the guide, are going to be really quite helpful. This is simply a pipeline one, so you've got the complexes, and this is actually quite a good way. So you've got your complexes and your entities, but then when you come to your wastewater, you've again got your gravity and your pressure pipelines. When you come here to the pipes and fittings, something like a steel pipeline, this is where the fact that it's a product supermarket is really key, because a steel pipeline can be used in so many different applications, whether it's to do with water supply, wastewater, whether it's gas, whether whether it's part of a heating system, so many different applications for that steel pipeline, which makes it really crucial to have it linked to a system above. And again here, some of the valves that are part of this particular area. The actual wastewater treatment, again, this is water treatment, not wastewater treatment, but this is looking at an actual building itself. So where you've got an administrative building, or perhaps a training building, or a workshop, there are many different buildings that you will have on your sites that don't have the specific either CO55 or CO50. And here you've got the roof and the flooring, and then the services appropriate for that. So obviously your primary function is to manage the water supply and treatment, or the wastewater collection and treatment. But within your estate, you will also have buildings that need more maintenance, more in line with other industries and office blocks. And then here we go. If you've got, this is looking at dams, where you're managing dams as well, then you've got the different types of complex, the entities, and then the systems for actually building them, and the controls. Excuse me. So those, I think you will find when you get access to the guide, you'll find a useful sort of as to how you can build up your the details of your estate using the tables. But generally speaking, within Uniclass, there are lots of ways, lots of information to help you to get to grips with Uniclass itself before you start applying it to your estate. There's a series of 4 videos which my colleague Paul Swaddle has recorded, which just give you a very basic and generic introduction to Uniclass and how it can be used. The other thing that's maybe important for you all to be aware of, that we update the tables 4 times a year. We're just about to issue the April update. There's just one final correction to do before they all go out. And in those updates, we include new codes. We sometimes amend existing codes. And sometimes we delete codes where it's quite obvious that we've got duplicates. Or they're just inappropriate. So it's really important then to register for the receiving the updates, and you can easily do that on the website. You'll be asked to register to do that, but there's no charge for downloading the Uniclass tables at any point, and it's simply it's simply a way to make sure that you have the ability to be updated, and you will be able to make a choice about what sort of information you're happy for MBS to send you. But it's a completely free service, the Uniclass. When people ask for new codes, and all this work we've done with the WICS group and with the WSAA group, the Australians, it usually involves a huge amount of discussion, because it's really important from our point of view that we fully understand exactly what's required, what when you ask for new codes, we need to be sure that we put them in the right place, 2, that we're not duplicating something that's already there, and 3, that it is appropriate. So it does involve a huge amount of discussion and clarification to make sure that what we're adding is appropriate. And these 2 groups have been absolutely fantastic in working together to come up with some generic descriptions which hopefully will match, will fit any installation. We're completely aware that we may have missed something, so don't don't hesitate in letting us know if there's something missing from the tables. And this is part of where you can get feedback. So you can actually feedback on the site itself, but also raise a support ticket for if you can't find the code that you want. And I'll just go back to the website itself. You can see up here, is that showing, Martin? Yeah, thank you. So here at the top on the Uniclass site, you've got all these areas. So stay updated. This is the one where you can request to be kept updated. You can unsubscribe at any times, and there's a privacy policy, but you can go onto a mailing list and then you'll get details. This takes you to some of the articles, and then we excuse me. This is part of the consultation, the site feedback, and again, the technical support here. So, and you've got the option to send an email or give us a call. So there's lots of ways of getting in touch with us in order to either get help or to request a new code or just really to find out more information. So and this is some information here. We've done a lot of work with the team working on the refurbishment of the Houses of Parliament, which has resulted in a lot of fascinating things being added to the codes. There is an API. Work is going on that, but you can certainly request the API, and that is part of the is something that you can then incorporate into your processes, your software processes. So that is an overview. So if there's any specific questions that about anything in particular, or any suggestions of where we need to improve.
Anything from anyone else? No, everyone's very quiet.
Okay. I'd like to think I've answered all the questions.
Yeah, hopefully.
But it would be nice to have some feedback to make sure that I'm not confusing more than helping.
Sarah, it might be I'll just reiterate the point because you touched on it in the presentation. We've noticed over time there's a tendency to want to focus, particularly when folks are a bit new to all of this, there's a tendency to want to focus very much on the product table and to select products because it probably seems a bit easier in that way. It's easier to sort of look for something and find a perfect match and think, great, I've done it. The power of this really, and it does come across in the guide for folks who haven't had a chance to have a look at that yet, is in using in particular all of the Uniclass tables that have been ascribed for this. So obviously you've seen a little bit from what Sarah has mentioned there. And many people will already be aware of this, that there are a number of tables for Uniclass, and Uniclass has to cope with all sorts of different parts of the industry for the for the built environment. But the guide is very much focused on complexes, entities, systems, and products. And the general consensus of the group in pulling the guide together was that those were the most useful tables that fitted the water industry in the broader sense best. So for anybody who is picking up this all up for the first time and looking at this completely new, if as I say, there might be a tendency to hone in on the products, which is understandable, but the products themselves, as Sarah mentioned, thinking back to the the spindle valves or whatever, they can be used in multiple systems. So it's really only once you get to system level and above that you start to actually define some of these things as what they actually are, where they are. So it's just perhaps a reiteration of that point, Sarah, just to say when you're picking this up, make sure that you take a sort of holistic view and look at tables other than the products table.
Yeah, I think that's really key, Martin. Thank you.
Okay, then if there's no more questions then from the audience, I think we'll call it there. Huge thank you to Sarah and Martin for their input today. We will circulate the Uniclass guide and we'll put it on the website, like I say, by the end of this week. But in the meantime, if anyone's got any questions that pop into their mind, just put it in the group chat or send an email to one of us. We'll be more than happy to help. And we'll post the recording as well of this session. So yeah, thank you for your time. Have a good day.
Thank you very much, Claire,
Thanks.
and
Cheers.
thanks all.
Thank you very much. Thank you.